So we are currently at the Ishihara Park Learning Garden. The City of Santa Monica operates 4 community gardens, this being the most recent one that we constructed in February of 2017. There are no rentable plots. It is an open work plan. So we have volunteer work days on Mondays and Wednesdays. We grow based off of what the community likes or what we feel is best for the current conditions. And then the produce is shared amongst volunteers, the community. We make donations to programs like Feeding Families or the West Side Food Bank or Meals on Wheels when we have larger produce donations. But the idea is really that this provides anybody that wants to get their hands dirty the opportunity to come in and learn about growing food, where food comes from, biodiversity, what's proper to plant, community composting, all of those types of things. One of the goals of this garden is to have limited food waste. So every Monday and every Wednesday, we're always doing some harvesting. So we have Rachel over there doing some harvesting on kale. We have some strawberries being harvested. Martha is doing the watering for us. We are going to be planting some cucumber seeds today. We're going to be flipping the compost. So those are some of the volunteer opportunities that you'll get throughout the regular workday.
I'm here twice a week, every week. It's one of the highlights of my week, of my life, to volunteer here, to continually learn new things here, to be part of a community. In July, I'll be 78 years old, and this has just been fantastic as a form of invigorating exercise, lifting, carrying, digging, pruning, watering. I can't think of anything better than for people my age to be volunteering at a community garden.
One of the things we're very proud of is that throughout the pandemic, we were able to continuously serve the community by providing them with fresh food in a time of desperate need. As small as it is, including our fruit trees in the back, we count the number of pounds we get from there. We're producing somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,500 pounds of food a year. All of the food that's harvested will be cleaned and weighed and cataloged, and then divided up often into some bags or just set outside. It all goes out to the communities. Any remaining food is then boxed up and bagged up and taken out to either the West Side Food Bank, a group called Feeding Families, which has been operating since the pandemic, and they provide weekend boxes of food to SMMUSD families. Composting is a hot topic right now. Everybody wants to compost because we are talking sustainability, and the City of Santa Monica has been kind of at the forefront, I think, of the composting programs for a number of years. Here at Ishihara Park, we are blessed in our learning garden with a large 3-bin system. We have our finished compost kind of in the middle here. In a second here, we're going to start flipping what we'll call our new material bin into the second bin, and then it will be kind of a cooking process. So the composting is really taking plant material and mixing it with a dead or a brown material into a black material, which is really what this is. So this started out really as this. One of the tasks that is involved is flipping compost. And we are taking the stuff from the top and we're gonna flip it to the bottom. And this is allowing us to kind of really make sure that our compost is going to be mixed up well. And we will then kind of mix our dry spots up with our wet spots and allow it to kind of continue composting. So after a couple months of kind of composting in here, then we will flip it over. That stuff will start to be sifted out and taken out and used. And as soon as that one's finished, this one will start to be flipped over, and then we'll kind of start a new one. So this is our finished compost, and this is my handy dandy compost turner, is moving to the bottom and bringing it up to the top. This bin was turned over recently, and so you'll start seeing that it's still not quite fully decomposed, but you can see that we do have some worms in here, and this is kind of one of those spots that is, getting our decomposers in there. We always preach the think globally and garden locally slogan. The more we can do and to grow our own food and to be sustainable ourselves means our city will be a sustainable city. So look forward to seeing y'all in the garden one of these days.
that was great, Teague. And now we have Julie Hanson. Julie Hanson is the owner of Wild Birds Unlimited Santa Monica. Originally from the Oregon countryside, she developed a fondness for nature at a young age, which led to studies in environmental geography and community forestry work in Africa. Now a longtime resident of Santa Monica, she focuses her work on bringing people and nature together through bird feeding and nature products, expert advice, and educational events, including classes, podcasts, kids programs, and bird walks. When not at the store, she can be found hiking and bird watching on local trails or attending her 3 children's sporting and music events. Let's see a little bit about owls with Julie.
My name is Julie Hanson, owner of Wild Birds Unlimited, and we're here at Ashland Park in the Sunset Park area of Santa Monica. We're here looking at our owl box that we installed about a year ago. We installed this box as well as another box down at the community garden on Main Street. We installed these 2 as well as a screech owl box. Barn owls are one of 3 owls that do live in our area. They have a high tolerance for human activity and therefore make great neighbors and do well in an urban environment such as Santa Monica. We are still waiting for a family to occupy it, but once they do, they'll help us keep down the rodent population by consuming up to 3,000 to 5,000 rats per nesting family. Barn owls are the perfect solution for pest control without the use of poisons, but in order to increase our owl population and in turn reduce the rat population, we have to make sure that our owls are safe here and can hunt safely. This means eliminating rat poisons from the environment, which can cause secondary poisonings and even death to the owls and other wildlife. Barn owl populations are on the decline due to habitat loss, and we can help them by adding back lost habitat, nesting habitat with these boxes. So get rat poisons out and put up some boxes and let the night hunters that we have here help us to be the perfect form of natural rodent control.
And our third panelist is Eli Lichter-Marck. Eli grew up in Los Angeles and spent his youth hiking the Santa Monica Mountains and surfing the beaches of Malibu. Upon graduating from Columbia University in New York City, he moved to southern Chile where he surfed, studied permaculture design, and was introduced to beekeeping. He was drawn to the beekeeper's responsibility to understand weather dynamics, plant genetics, and the insect biology that make up the world of the bees. Upon returning to Los Angeles, Eli began beekeeping as a hobby. It soon became an obsession of his, love of bees, and nature quickly grew into the full-time enterprise that is Eli's Bees. Eli currently lives in Topanga Canyon where he runs his bee operation. And I'm adding to his bio and just saying that Eli also recently became a father. So congratulations, Eli, and let's see some bees.
My name is Eli Lichter-Marck. I'm a beekeeper in the Santa Monica Mountains. I've been a beekeeper for about 10 years. I have 400 hives that I manage.
Queen bee, queen bee, queen bee. Queen bee, please come back to me. Queen bee, queen bee, queen bee. Yes, queen bee. Queen bee, please come back to me.
I started beekeeping about 10 years ago and started a honey business with my father, and him and I now sell about 20,000 pounds of honey a year to vendors all over Los Angeles County. Restaurants, bakeries, and juice shops.
Queen bee. Queen bee, please come back to me.
Daily routine for the bees is I make sure that they are healthy and happy, well fed, that they have a good queen and enough space to grow.
Queen bee, queen bee, queen bee. Yes, queen bee. Queen bee, please come back to me.
The queen bee organizes the hive. She lays the eggs and controls the temperament of her daughters. Once a year we mark her so we can keep track of her.
Queen bee, queen bee, queen bee. Yes, queen bee. Queen bee, please come back to me.
These are 2 rescue hives that we collected from the city. This one weighs probably about 8 to 10 pounds. 1 pound of bees is about 4,000 bees. So we're talking 40,000 bees in this box right here.
Queen bee, queen bee, queen bee. Queen bee, please come back to me. Queen bee, queen bee, queen.
This is a queen cell. The bees have drawn out. It looks pretty young. What the bees do is an egg is laid at the top of the cup up here, and the bees build this long cocoon over it. If you open it up, you'll see this white substance. That's actually royal jelly. This larva is a premature queen bee. She's still a larva at this stage, but if she had stayed in here another week or so, she would have metamorphosized into a adult nymph queen.
Every time she sting me. Lord, it makes my blood run warm.
Well, thank you so much, Julie, Teague, and Eli. I hope you enjoyed the film. It was really inspiring, and I hope you enjoyed these videos, very educational. And I thank you so much for staying for the panel, which is going to come right up. I just want to remind you that we will be taking audience questions after we take the questions from Meredith. So remember, if you want to ask a question, please put it in the Q&A. Do not put it in the chat feature. If you see a question there that you would like to hear answered, instead of re-entering the same question, you can use the upvote feature. You click on the thumbs up next to the question. It'll upvote it, it'll move it to the top, and then it'll be seen a lot easier. And then after the event, as we do at all our events, we'd love for you to take a short survey. The surveys help us understand what you thought about our events and how we can improve them, as well as it gives you the opportunity to share with us the commitments to take action that you're going to make. The survey link will be posted after the chat, after the panel in the chat, and we'll also be sending it to you in an email in a few days. So as an incentive for people to participate in the survey, anyone who answers the survey or fills it out will be entered into a prize drawing for a chance to win a prize. And prizes are 2 lucky winners will receive a raw honey tasting kit from Eli's Bees. So thank you, Eli, for donating 2 things of honey for 2 of our winners. So if you fill out the survey, you'll be entered into that prize drawing. Now let's get the panel started. I'm so pleased to introduce our moderator, Meredith McCarthy. As Director of Operations at Heal the Bay, Meredith McCarthy oversees the organizational health and well-being of all programs and staff. As an avid scuba diver, she has seen firsthand what putting too much in, taking too much out, and ignoring the edge of the ocean has done to our coastal systems. She stands committed to building community in order to protect the health of this precious resource and the 11 million people that benefit from it. Welcome, Meredith.
Thank you.
Okay, stop sharing. So,
all right.
Okay.
So I think we have some questions that we're going to get going. I would like to start this section of the presentation by acknowledging that This meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Tongva people, and I pay my respect to elders both past, present, and emerging. So without any further ado, I think we're going to back up for 1 second. And thank you, Gina, for pulling this together. It's such an amazing group to be with and to be part of. So I was, so moved by that film. And of course, Attenborough's voice, I feel like, is the voice of my entire lifespan. So it's a powerful narration. But I wanted to first check in with each of our panelists and get a quick, maybe 2 words on what was the most inspiring moment for you as you watched that film and about this extraordinary year that we've all survived. I'm going to start with Teague. I pick on Teague.
Wow, that wasn't on the list that you sent us, Meredith, but I appreciate that. And I just want to say kudos to Gina. I'm stalling here. I just think that the sheer interaction of humans and animals and how we impact them on a daily basis and don't recognize it. That's what I'll say.
Nice, thank you. Julie, any first impressions about the film?
Yeah, 2 words isn't enough. That was it's a great film, impactful in so many ways. I think for me, it's how quickly things turned so early in the film when they're at the Himalayas. That's very early in the film, and how it's a generational change in that 30 years people had not seen the Himalayas, and all of a sudden they're seeing it. So a generation of people had not seen those. And if we can make a change so early with just pulling humans out of the equation, think about just what long-term changes we can make.
Right.
So we can make quick changes. We have the power to make long-term changes.
We're pretty fancy like that. I agree. Eli, what do you think? Any immediate impression?
The part of the movie that struck me the most was actually that towards the end, the part about the elephants. And to me, the fact that all of a sudden people had time to come up with a solution to a problem that had been around. I mean, the elephants had been bothering the farmers, and all of a sudden people were back home and were able to get together and come up with a solution that was good for everybody.
Thank you for bringing that up. I think it's a very powerful moment. And I think that this idea of not, anytime we're butting heads like that, that it should always make us pause and say, how can we do this differently? And I think that the elephant story highlighted that really exceptionally well. So when we face that in our own neighborhood, I'll open this up to all of you. How can we get our leaders and locally, nationally, to adopt new ways of thinking? How do we work in harmony with nature? Do you think we can get it done without, I feel like settling into cost benefit analysis and nature always gets crushed because of the short-sightedness of that way of thinking. So I was just throwing it out to any of you if you have any thoughts about how to open up that logjam.
I will say, I think having conversations, that it's an important thing. And I think in Santa Monica, we're fortunate that as residents, we often are able to have the ear of our leaders and sharing the importance of sustaining these things. And I think Santa Monica, Julie was talking about taking the rat poisons out, right? That's where Santa Monica's heading, right? It's like they're adding in these owl boxes to prevent and at the same time taking out the rat poisons to benefit our habitat, and so I think our leaders are hearing it here, especially here in Santa Monica. We just have to keep going, right? I mean, as you look at most schools that are putting in gardens now, there used to be something like a garden there, then it was asphalted over, and now it's becoming a garden. These things aren't new. The Main Street Garden has been there for 45 years. It needs to be part of the conversation at all levels at this point.
Thank you. The film shows us what is possible. And I was just curious, how you feel about our ability to maintain some of these behaviors. Like, is it going to be 10 minutes and we're done and we're back to it and we're back to buying bread and driving our kids 1,000 places? And what do you think we're going to hold on to? What do you hope we're going to hold on to? The new normal.
Is that for me or Julie or Eli? You want to answer that one?
I think if I can jump in,
Please.
I think personally, I think some of it will go back to whatever we want our new normal to be. We don't want to, I just kind of think I don't want to necessarily ready to go back to what it was before. What do we want our new normal to be? And a lot of it's, taking out the noise. And I think about pollution. I think about noise pollution or light pollution. A lot of that, I think people gained from that this year, and they want to hold on to elements of that. And some things will be long-term in the workplace. Some people won't go back to work. So maybe, there's going to be changes in patterns of traffic and things like that that may stick with us. And so hopefully some of those will be policy changes that will take place because people will have seen it over the year. So I think we did maybe have a long enough time to make some transitional changes in our lives so we could see that things are possible, to hold on to it long enough to want things to change. But, a lot of things are going to, we've already seen it, traffic patterns are back and things like that. So we've got to kind of make it in our everyday life, something we work at.
So moving from that film, which I think highlighted so brilliantly, the need for animals to communicate with each other, which I think, we don't spend a lot of time unless you're studying it, that the fact that they're talking to each other or communicating with each other. So how does urban noise impact owls? And then Eli, I'm going to ask you about the bees in a second. What is the impact, and then on the plant secondarily?
On owls specifically, well, owls are nocturnal and they hunt primarily through sound. So if you take down the sound pollution, planes, cars, things that might come into the night, then their hunting's going to be better. And so they'll hunt and probably have better, families, similar to what you saw with the whales and things, and the cubs being able to hunt and all of that. So you're going to probably have stronger families when you can hunt with less noise pollution. But yeah, that's with the owls specifically at night, their hearing is, their keen sense is the hearing, and their ability to hunt is dependent on that. So amazing. That's with them specifically. And all birds are vocal, so being able to communicate with their song back and forth, and hear each other in an urban environment, with the sound and noise pollution goes up, they can communicate less.
It's amazing. And Eli, do the bees communicate in that, obviously in a different way, but did they benefit from the pandemic?
Well, so it's a little different with bees. Honeybees happen to be pretty good at living their lives and sort of just totally being on a different plane of existence than humans. And they do pretty good in urban environments because they're really good at finding, the liminal spaces that are not occupied. So they go to that hole in the tree that's so high that no person can get to. They go to that crack in your house that you never look at. They end up in these places all around the urban environment. And so like in terms of the bees and their, direct effect from the pandemic, it's not the same thing as mammals or birds. However, what I will say is that people became much more aware, and maybe because they were spending more time at home in their gardens and, wondering, why aren't there more bees in my garden? Or where are all these bees coming from in my garden? So I actually noticed a lot more of people's engagement in bees. And I all throughout the pandemic, I got all kinds of phone calls of people wanting to come visit the bees and wanting to learn more about the bees, way more than I had beforehand.
So on that same vein, sitting out with my, my husband's permanent office was out on the patio. And so he spent a year outside, which, was just so strange. And one afternoon he came running into the house and I said, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "There's a swarm." And there was a tornado outside of the bees. And we're all, our faces paced to the kitchen window, like, what is going to happen? And I then after a while it calmed down, and then he went back outside and there was a huge, like a slumpy beard on the lemon tree. And it was this huge bee beard. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's what it looked like. What is actually happening in that moment?
So, like I said, that's something that the bees do every springtime. A mature hive will produce new queens. And as those queens become mature, the old queen or some of the new queens will basically split the hive. Mm-hmm. So let's say a new queen is being born, the old queen will rally, let's say, half the population of the hive, and they will take off and fly and try to find a new home. And so if you think of the beehive as an organism on a communal scale, it is the colony reproducing itself. And so it splits off, and the original colony stays where it was, and the new colony is like a bud that goes out and finds a new location. So the queen will fly and land on your porch, mm-hmm. and all of those bees that she rallied to go with her will follow her and then form that clump around her to protect her. And
so in that moment, are they wildly dangerous?
And then that location from there from which to enter and start the new hive.
So in that moment, that is the moment where you're a mom and you're staring out the window, or a dad, you're like, oh my gosh, my children are in danger. So if everybody just stayed inside for an hour, it would be fine. I think that's the moment where people call, vector control, and they panic. So I was just curious, what should we do in that moment?
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion. So in the movies, the bee swarm is this dangerous thing that comes at you and chases you away. In real life, when bees are swarming is when they are the most docile possible. Before they leave the hive, they engorge themselves on honey, and they couldn't even sting you if they wanted to. They're like totally uninterested in defending themselves. All they need to do is they're in their most vulnerable state. So actually that's when you see, a beekeeper like me can go out and I can work with the bees with no suit on. I can touch the bees. I'm totally not worried about them stinging me at all. So
your lack of gloves did not go unnoticed. I got to say,
yeah.
You sort of elevated to superhuman status, right? Yeah. In that moment. And I was like, what is he doing?
Well, that's actually kind of like a fundamental thing. And this is, I think, a theme for that whole movie, is that the more we learn about, nature and about the other animals around us, the better we can interact with them, and the less we have to fear with them, and the more harmonious we can exist with them.
Okay, so we don't have to go get the raid. We don't need poison in that moment. We don't need animal. We don't need vector.
You don't even need gloves.
All right, I'm probably not going to test you on that theory, but that's amazing. That is incredibly helpful. Is there a moment when we should call? I mean, like, when do you guys get called for that emergency box?
Yeah, if you see a swarm, you can call LA County and you can ask for a live bee removal. Mm-hmm. And they will actually refer you to a beekeeper. I'm on a list of live hive capture. And it's a good idea to do that, because then the bees will end up in an apiary instead of flying around your neighborhood and ending up getting exterminated somewhere down the road. So it is a good idea to call the county and just ask for the live bee removal, and they will refer you to a beekeeper.
Okay, live bee removal. That is a very important phrase. Okay, thank you for that little momentary, I call it my Reader's Digest PhDs that I get all day long, every day. So flipping over to owls and birds, I think there's also some misunderstanding. And so Julie, help us understand this idea of, balancing you mentioned that, or in the video, there's that owls are so important in this idea of managing, little mammals. And I think at some point that makes people panic. So what is the myth about, these populations being out of control or in control, and what does balance look like? And what role do owls play in that, balancing the populations?
Do you mean of the rat populations? Well, the role that the owls really play, that can really play, and we have the three different owls that we talk about. We are primarily talking about the barn owls and how they can really benefit us, and the reason they can benefit us so much is because we can sort of invite more, and we can increase the habitat of barn owls in our urban areas. One is because they do well in urban environments, but we can increase it by putting nesting boxes in, because they are cavity nesters as opposed to the great horned owl, which are more open nesters. So we can put up barn owl boxes, and we can introduce them into their already, these are already natural habitats for them, but we can increase the numbers, and then they can help us with natural rat control. So right now the problem is really getting out of balance because people are putting out poisons for rat control. And what happens is the natural predators for the rats they eat the rat poison, and then they get secondary poisons. And then, so the system just gets out of balance because the natural predators are getting poisoned. And it's not just the owls, it's the coyotes, it's the bobcats, it's it's really, if you look at the cats up in the, P51, I mean, what I'm trying to say, that not just the bobcats, but the other cats as well.
The mountain lions.
Mountain lions, exactly. So they're getting mange, and so the rats get poisoned slowly, so they don't die right away. And then so the predators still see them as alive, and they get this toxic level of poisons in their system. And so it's just really not a good way to be thinking about, controlling it. So we add more of the natural predators, get things back in balance that way with the owls. So they can really provide a great service for us. We also have the screech owls that do nest in a nesting box as well. They just tend to be up towards the mountains a little bit more, less kind of urban. So barn owls are just, a great kind of solution that we can think of and try to introduce more back into the landscape here.
So what does one need to be a good owl guardian, of an owl box guardian? Do you need space, height?
Yeah, we look at kind of everybody's property and individually as to whether or not it would work. And there's no one thing that we look at. We do want to remind people that they hunt within, a family can hunt within a mile radius. So one owl family can benefit a community. You don't necessarily have to have one in every yard, and they aren't going to just hunt in your backyard. So if you can't fit one in your backyard, maybe work with a community group to select a location that can work for a few families, or, an area. So if there's a, pocket park, a corner area or something that you can put it in, they are fairly big boxes that we want to put up at a height of, good 12 or 13 feet up, that you need to monitor every year. So we want to look at your backyard and, the most quiet location. You can put them in trees if you need to, or on the side of a building, but we like the idea of putting them on freestanding poles because we can try to control predators from getting in there, crawling up there and getting into the boxes. So and that's what you saw in the film from the city that we did. So there's a few things that we can look at, but it's not every house is going to be the same. So we want to just kind of look at the property and help people to get the right setup.
So under the caption of biodiversity, owls are part of a network. Can you talk a little bit about what a urban biodiversity looks like from the bird point of view?
From birds in general, I mean, birds play an amazing role birds in general are, we have birds that are pollinators. We have hummingbirds that are pollinating plants. We have orioles right now that are visiting and pollinating plants, seed-eating birds that, spread seed and help, spread seeds. So we have important plants for other wildlife. We have our insect-eating plants, which again help us to reduce pesticides, keep pesticides out. So let's let our birds eat those insects instead of putting pesticides right away on our plants. We have our other raptors, our hawks and kestrels, and our scavengers out there that take up other rodents and clean our streets. So we've got, in terms of biodiversity, having a really diverse amount of birds out there doing these jobs for us is a sign of a healthy environment and healthy, just a healthy cityscape. And I think what most people come to me are really surprised at the diversity of birds that we do actually have in LA County. And so we're really fortunate to be one of what we call birdiest counties in the United States. When we do counts, we actually count more species as a county than some other states put together. And we're on the Pacific Flyway, so we're really, really fortunate here.
So are you should I have a big bird feeder in my house? Should I try to have a garden instead? What's your leaning on bird feeders?
Well, first and foremost, I would say if you can put up, if you have the chance to put up native plants that can produce nectar, seeds, I would do that for sure. The key is to let them go to seed and produce those seed for the birds, and let them produce nectar for the birds. And then keep the leaf litter there so that it actually produces the insects for the birds, because birds need insects. And we're too quick to use leaf blowers that just throw the leaf litter up. All those insects are gone. We need to really, really reduce the use of leaf blowers. It's a key thing. So
does mulch work in the same way as leaf litter, or is
not really? Leaf
Okay.
litter breaks down. All those insects are in there. Those birds come in. They forage around. The warblers will get in there, and all those little birds are going to get in there, and they need those insects. So, and we have flycatchers as well that come and get the other, all the ones. So all those birds are really working. But the minute we use a leaf blower, not only is it bad in other ways for the environment and the humans that are using it, but the birds really, if we don't have insects, we won't have birds. Right. And so, biodiversity right there. But with bird feeders are a great way to connect people to nature and as a supplement, source for that. And when people care about birds and know what birds they have, they tend to care about their greater environment.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. So Teague, on that same brilliant thought that Julie just brought up, this connector of people to nature, I think your gardens, and I've known Teague for a long time, I think you've known that almost inherently since birth. What drew you to gardening in the first place?
I grew up in Indiana. I think that for me, gardening really, anybody that comes and visits our garden, or I talk to garden about, that it's just something everybody kind of has a connection to. So I grew up in Indiana on a farm community. My grandparents' garden, I probably gave it not a look for the longest time. And then, you know, served in the Peace Corps. And I think Julie served in the Peace Corps also. It's interesting. Julie and I now have known each other all of like a year and a half, and
we
have
had parallel lives.
Connection and everything, which is what I love about the garden, this whole community, right? Is the people that you meet, Meredith. I mean, you and Gina, and you know, meeting Eli and Julie. I mean, it's like, you know, everybody that's here and all of our participants, right? You know, we're the one. You know, this is the group. Like, we're preaching to the choir here. So, you know, so I, you know, grew up in Indiana, traveled to the Peace Corps, kind of came back, started building gardens with the LA Conservation Corps, and kind of migrated here to Santa Monica.
So I'm curious about the Ishihara open platform versus the rental plots. If there is, are you finding that I mean, in the true sense of the community, that it's, you know, we're all working on this as a communal project, not my plot, and I'm going to grow the one thing that I want to grow. You have more control to control the biodiversity, I'm assuming, really, of the garden. And are you, and I know you have a bunch of different gardens that you work on. Can you talk a little bit about what's great about the open format versus the rental plots?
Well, I think that it's just it's more community based, right? I mean, instead of having your plot and Eli's plot and Julie's plot, like, we're all working on a goal together. And what it allows us to do is, just historically, I've been involved in community gardens for, you know, many years, is they're just more productive. You know, there's people there all the time kind of participating. And, you know, you saw Martha in the video who talks about it's like her favorite place, you know, and I love seeing Martha. And I just has allowed, especially for the city of Santa Monica, one is it allows us to interact with a greater number of people than those independent those gardens down at Main Street. Not that those aren't a beautiful biodiverse habitat. I mean, dozens of birds, hundreds of thousands of insects, you know, hundreds of plant species. But the Ishihara Park's just a little bit different in that it just feels more like a group effort. And through that, I think it kind of shows in what we have. Interestingly enough, this has been our most productive year at Ishihara Park. And really? I associate it back to with less human traffic through our garden. So interestingly, not just the animals, but many of the plant species are also doing better.
So how do people sign up? How do they they just show up, or what's the volunteer protocol?
So Ishihara Park, we have volunteer work days, Mondays and Wednesdays. So it's been a little bit tight, right, with the COVID kind of thing, but we're open from 9:30 till we are done doing whatever needs to be done. So sometimes it's at least 11, goes to 12 occasionally, Mondays and Wednesdays. So the opportunity really is for people to kind of just come get some experience. In non-COVID times, we also do school groups, workshops, preschools, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, local high schools, you know, anybody that wants to come do it. We do fruit tree workshops there as well. But if they want to come and just kind of get their hands dirty, Mondays and Wednesdays, starting at 9:30, Ishihara Park, we're there.
That is fantastic. I am so excited to know about that, because like, I'm not a very green thumbed person, but I like the idea of gardening. So if I come garden with you, then I scratch my itch and I look at the bounty of our harvest, and then I go back to my succulents.
Hey, succulents are good too, right? I mean, gardening is just very calming for people and kids. And, you know, Eli, you know, talked about not wearing gloves and really connecting to nature, right? And it's, you know, we get a lot of young kids come through there, but because there's so many, like like sitting and watching when no one's moving and the birds are kind of coming in and eating the insects, right? It really, you know, Julie hit on it too. It's like, you know, they are looking for things, and it's really interesting, that movie you talk about taking away all of the traffic and all of the people, and you just focus on what's happening. It's really amazing what nature does. So can I just say, I wanted to say the thing from that movie that that impacted me the most was that whatever it was, a large rodent capybara coming out and it being on the grass and then being chased away by the dogs. right? It was like, oh, it's so cute. Oh, we're back. There it goes again. Dang it. You know, and what would we rather have, right?
Right.
Would we rather have those native species, you know, in our urban settings, or would we rather have little yappy dogs running around? And I'm not saying people don't have their yappy dogs, but you know, there needs to be some respect for the natural setting. And you know, we've owned it for such a long time, and I think it's time. Those the dune restoration down in Santa Monica. You know, the consideration of putting in these parks with fruit trees and replanting. You know, cities replanting maybe their parks with more native species. Right, we're kind of like giving it back to nature, and I think we just got to keep moving that way.
Yeah, and I do think, we get swallowed by, vector and maintenance costs. And it's like, well, but if the community wills it to be, then, almost always it goes in the right direction. And so I know that fruit trees were such a no-no for so long, because how could we imagine managing that, because the bees will come. And, here we are in just this full circle. So I love the three of you together. Thank you so much for how passionate you all are and for sharing all of these amazing ways that we can connect. I think there's some really great questions in the box here. So I think Gina's gonna pull some out.
I'll grab a few and then we'll go back for a couple more questions from you, Meredith. But I think this one was answered, but Marilee Grantham said, where can I get an owl box? And is that you, Julie? Does she go visit you?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. We generally have owl boxes. We're out of owl boxes now until the fall. The fall will be the next time that people should really consider putting them up. So before the next nesting season. So we'll have them in by that time. We do have screech owl boxes in, but we don't have the barn owl boxes in. There's also a way you can build them on your own. So you can go to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which is a great resource, and they have something called, you can go to nestwatch.org, and you can actually get plans to build your own if you want. All the specifications are there. And you can also look into a local organization called CLAW, which is Citizens for LA Wildlife, and they also have a barn owl project. They're trying to get up as many barn owls as they can for the same reason.
Right. I'm going to be sending an email to everyone who attended. So if you can email me that, I'll add that in so people don't have to remember that.
Sure.
Another question for you, Julie. This comes from Ann Bowman. If you put up a box, is there something to put in it or spray in it to attract a barn owl? Also, do they like the entrance to face a certain direction, ergo north, east, whatever?
Okay. The owl boxes that we have come with basically some pine chips that we just put in. It's like a nesting material. That's all you start with. Otherwise, you don't do anything to attract them. They are attracted to the nesting hole. It mimics basically a cavity in a tree. That's what you're putting up. You're putting up a nesting habitat that they no longer have because we don't have enough nesting cavities in trees. So they're looking for the dark hole. And other than that, you're providing the food, which is the rats. So they're coming to areas where food is available, which we have in our city. And they don't need barn owls. Sometimes we face them in east direction, but they're pretty, it's pretty much okay to do any direction with the barn owl.
Right. This is for Eli. Eli, where in Santa Monica can someone purchase your honey?
The first place that comes to mind is Farm Shop, which is, well, it's in Brentwood. It's a market in Brentwood, Farm Shop at the Brentwood Country Mart. There is the Justa Bakery, which is in Venice. You can come up here to Topanga. There's a Canyon Gourmet is another shop. I also have a program on my website, which is you can just order and you can pick up yourself. So you can avoid shipping, avoid that, the added environmental impact of shipping something across town when you can come get it yourself, and then come up to Topanga and go for a hike and go see the flowers that is in the honey.
Thank you. It sounds like we need to get your honey in Santa Monica somewhere.
Heck
I'll
yeah.
sell it. You can have it in the
Jerry Rubin asks, I guess this is you, Teague, how important is protecting and planting more trees in dealing with climate change?
Very important. I think that planting trees is an easy way to help increase biodiversity, right? Start small, but find somewhere you can plant some trees. There's a lot of organizations that do planting, and be part of that.
Great. Anne Gao said, sorry, this is such a basic question, but I'm still learning about bees. What is the purpose of their honey? And does it harm them when we take their honey? Don't they make it because they need it?
It's a basic question, but it's the most important question that everybody assumes they understand, but never really stops to think about. So honey is made by the bees because the flowers that they depend on for their nectar and their pollen, which is their energy and their protein source, only flower for part of the year. So as part of an adaptation to living in areas that are like temperate regions that have a winter, spring, summer, and fall, when there is an abundance of flowers, they will collect that nectar and turn it into a preserve, which is honey. So honey is basically nectar collected by the bees and then turned into a long-lasting preservative that they can eat throughout the year, used to stay warm and to feed their young as they grow in the spring and wait for the next flowers to bloom. It can hurt the bees if you take too much honey when they don't have enough. So for instance, like this year, where I think Santa Monica's normal rain is 12 inches or 16 inches,
Yeah.
somewhere in that range. We got 4 inches or 3 inches. There's not enough honey to harvest. So this is a year where I just decided, you know what, all the honey that the bees make is going to stay with the bees. If I find a hive that seems like it's making surplus honey, I will take some of it. But usually you only take honey when the bees basically offer it to you. So you have to be very attentive to their state. So
I think that's a common thing in nature. Like we tend to take, it's there, take without having that balance of, not over, because no one else in nature stockpiles and steals more than they need, just humans.
Sure.
For Julie, can owls catch the mice close to houses or around the back alleys of restaurants around the garbage bins? I'm going to go for 3 here. Do barn owls hoot during the night? And can you put the boxes in trees near apartment buildings?
Okay, so yes, they'll eat rats wherever they can locate them. Barn owls do not hoot. If you hear, most people will hear an owl more than they see an owl. So it's great to know what they sound like. If you hear a hoot, you're hearing the great horned owl. If you're hearing a screech, you're hearing the barn owl. Barn owls have more of a screechy sound. And the screech owl also has more of a screechy sound. So the traditional hoot is the great horned owl. Can you put up a box near apartments?
In trees near apartment buildings.
That would be, and near alleys, I think that would be a little bit tricky. I think probably space availability to put such a large box would be difficult in an apartment area. I mean, you'd have to, because of its size and the height we need to put at, and we also have to consider that because we're inviting a nesting family to come in and they're nocturnal, that they can be loud during that nesting season at night. So we want to place them kind of away from where people are sleeping. So we want to have, we want to be considerate of where we place them. So we're not having them by people's bedrooms and things like that. So when we get into apartments and places like that, we have that consideration. So I don't know that I necessarily put them that close to apartments, but every place is a little different. So we just have to look at it. There can always be an exceptional spot to consider.
Thank you. And those questions are from Kathy Carol Crowther and Sheila Laffey. For Teague, this is anonymous. I like the new food garden. I think the Main Street Garden is not as inclusive with the public. You cannot volunteer or get great food. I think I like more. Okay, this is just a comment that I like food. I like more food being grown, and of course, plants for the pollinators are for the monarch butterflies. Milkweed would be great. So what about butterflies? Do you get butterflies, and who decides what's going to be food planted? That's, yeah. You want to answer that one?
We have made tremendous strides in making the Main Street Garden more accessible. So we have a lot of people on the wait list, and try to, this Saturday, as a matter of fact, we'll have our first open house of the year, and you're welcome to come and see a owl box, which we have down there at Main Street, get a pack of seeds and stuff like that. I don't know what the other question was. How do we decide what gets planted at the Ishihara garden?
Well, talking about he likes the food, so I was just wondering it wasn't really a question, it was a comment, so I added in who decides what's going to be planted, and do you have pollinators for monarch butterflies? Sorry.
We do. The whole Ishihara Park itself is planted out with all kinds of native species of flowers and blooming trees and stuff like that. So we use the garden itself mainly only for food production. There are some milkweed that pop up around here and there and other things. We often will leave things going to flower and going to seed, simply to ensure that everybody it is a learning garden, right? We need to learn about the cycle of life. So we leave the flowers, the bloom for all of that stuff. But when we choose what is planting, we usually talk about it as a group. And this is our 4th year there. We know it's pretty productive, and it's been very productive. It's a nice little habitat, right? It's kind of in harmony right now, and that's what you're looking for. Better, we get more plants because we just have a better biodiversity there, I think.
Great. And Julie, is the salmonella outbreak among wild birds over? The last I heard was that we all need to take down our bird feeders to prevent spreading the disease, but I haven't heard when we can put the feeders back out. This is from Ann Gow. The question.
Okay. Yeah, good question. Yeah, mostly that's passed. That was that was from the pine siskin population that was coming down from the north, carrying it. Most of those birds have gone back north up to their natural breeding locations, Canada, Washington state. And so we really haven't seen any of those birds for a good month at most. So some of those later reports that we were seeing in the LA Times were really late reports. We were dealing with it like March, April. So I think with the salmonella or any kind of concerns like that, and you have a feeder, we just say it's a really good opportunity to educate about making sure you have feeders, keeping them clean, doing a good solution of, just taking them down, cleaning them out, and sanitizing them if we got anything like that. But I think you're definitely safe to put feeders back up right now. And we don't have the finches that are really eating in large quantities as much as we did earlier in the season.
I'm going to ask this question because Catherine Byrne asked about it, and Lisa Azuma, and I don't know if any of you can respond, but it was brought up earlier about the leaf blowers and how they affect, get rid of insects and they scare birds away. I'm sure bees don't like them, humans don't like them. But Catherine Byrne thought the leaf blowers were prohibited in Santa Monica, which I believe they are, but they want to know what can be done about the lack of enforcement. A lot of people feel that isn't being enforced. Can anyone answer that, or is this, we have to go to the city for that one?
I call a lot, and when I call, I just get that they don't have the means to enforce, and that when you can report on the day that the landscaper's there, the gardener's there, they'll try to come out on that day, but that's really all I get. Or you can try to talk to the owner of the house and ask them, try to educate on a local level, on a neighbor to neighbor level. But it's frustrating.
I've actually done with my neighbors. I don't go to the landscaper because it's not their decision. I
Right.
go to the owner, knock on the door, and ask them first, did you know that the person who's landscaping is using a leaf blower that's illegal? And they'll either say, oh, I didn't know that, and don't go at it as attacking, but just try to educate them. And just have in hand some of the reasons why we don't want to be using leaf blowers.
I think that that there is some misunderstanding that electric leaf blowers are okay because they don't have the same pollution levels, because I don't think everybody understands that even electric leaf blowers still push all that debris up in the air. So it's good to educate that it's not just the gas, but it's also the electric. So no, leaf blowers are good.
I think we've kind of gone through all the questions. Someone asked about exterminating, but I think Eli had already mentioned that, who you can contact. And Eli, if you can tell me, if you can email me who we can connect people with to contact if they have bees, or if, you know, then I will include that in the email I send. So that's it for audience questions. And I'm going to send it back to you, Meredith, for a couple more questions before we wrap it up.
I'm sort of curious that, you know, as the population swells and LA becomes a super city, people worry that density and urban biodiversity can't mix. And so I'm curious to the three of you, is density the problem, or is the behavior the problem? Is there, I mean, I think the three of you have just exemplified in such a beautiful way that we can manage super dense cities. Just curious if you have any thoughts about that.
Julie, you want to go first?
No, you Teague, you go. Is density or is our behavior the problem?
Right.
I don't know. There's a lot of dense cities in Europe, and from experience, a lot of actions early on that I can just think of were put in place many years ago that were pretty good in terms of recycling years ago, that were much better than what we did. So, and housing and things like that. So I think behavior and policy is definitely possible, and it's possible to live in dense areas, and certainly setting aside wild spaces and making sure we have wild spaces, not just, you know, for our wildlife, but for people you know, that we just don't put concrete on everything.
Oh,
I mean,
nature-based solutions, what?
But yeah, that we, you know, manage our space creatively. And there's so many interesting things coming up and ways to do that now, to integrate everything.
Yeah.
But,
go ahead, Teague.
I'll just add to that, right? You know, we can't control density, right? We're not going to be doing population control, but we can control our own behavior. And the whole think globally and garden locally is like, do what you can to make your area better, right? Whether it's, you know, putting up outboxes or planting trees or growing a garden or, you know, preserving bees, right? You know, everybody needs to be doing something because we're not getting less dense. So, right. But we can be better behaved, I can tell you that.
I have one thing to add, which is along the same lines, that like the reality of our world is that there's a lot of us, and we have to make sure we face that reality. I think that part of what we learned from the pandemic and what that movie was really powerful to teach us is that if we stop for a second and look around, the natural world is still flourishing around us. And I think like, you know, what that teaches me is that it comes down to educating our children and each other and our parents and our communities, and making sure we take the time to, like, you know, live in super dense, intense environments, to look around at the world that we live in. And even though LA is a super, you know, megalopolis, right on its border is the Santa Monica Mountains, which are totally wild, you know, absolutely uninhabitable and wild and amazing and full of diverse species and full of unique plants. And so, you know, pick up your head and go look around and you'll find it.
That's great.
I just want to add in that urban densities create a lower footprint. You know, look at urban sprawl. Urban sprawl has so many issues, but it has to be built with nature in mind. And one example I bring from the film is in India with the elephants. They could have put up a wall, they could put up a fence, but what they did was they looked at it and they brought nature in. So if we can build, unless we can curb our population, our cities can be sustainable and dense, but if they're built in alignment and, looking at nature, how nature creates things, things like vegetable gardens on your roof, plants along the sides of your building, water, like the city's new building has, like the water is completely recycled. We can live close together and having train stations where people don't have to drive their cars. We can live close together and it can be sustainable if we use, the system of following nature's lead, biomimicry in the way we develop our cities. I think we have time for one more question.
I'm just curious, I come from the policy world, and I think, Julie, you said this before. I was just wondering if you could, change a policy, write a policy, or get an elected to change a policy, write a policy. What would it do to support the biodiversity that you are that you hold center? Or you could cheer for someone that already exists too.
Oh gosh, write a policy. Well, I mean, I guess I'm, talking about owls and poisons. We did get Assembly Bill 1788, I think it was, signed by the governor to get out some of the really, really bad anticoagulant poisons this year from the selling. So, but there's still many poison. So, but they're still out there, and then there's still these second generation poisons. So I guess I would say other bills that in the citywide or countywide that would take out maybe all poisons from the system.
That's great.
Poison. So yeah, take it even one step further to get them out. Yeah.
Great, thank you. How about Eli? What do you think? A new policy, change an old policy? What would make lives better for bees from a municipal standpoint?
I think I know that like Santa Monica has really strict rules about for new construction about like collecting runoff. So it would be interesting if they had a similar kind of requirement of like new construction to provide certain amount of like wildflower land or something like that. Making a landscape that was more like a patchwork landscape where, like the landscaping was actually like designed on a community scale. Everyone's got beautiful gardens, but if we could be a little bit more mindful of supporting the ecosystem that we actually live in, I think it would go pretty far to change the neighborhoods. But that just came up with that.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not a lawmaker.
No, that's all right. What about it, Teague? What do you think? If you ruled the world for 10 minutes.
We're currently working on with a group from the Garden Advisory Committee on just kind of identifying vacant properties around the city of Santa Monica that have been vacant for a long time and finding a way to make them part of the habitat. Whether it be a community garden or just planted with native pollinating plants for a while, right? Eli hit on it, right? There's a lot of opportunities out there to create a better biodiverse Santa Monica, and somehow easing up that. Well, as an employee, I'll be a little cautious on what I'm saying, but that'd be something I would personally like to see, is us kind of put a little more focus in. Making, just not doing a whole lot of things, but, seeding it over with, some native seeds and letting it go during the winter. Simple to do, right? And, they should be serving our community in a way that is not just waiting to be sold and developed.
Great, thank you. And I just have my own little plug here for I know the City of Los Angeles Blitz Challenge is on. The challenge runs from June 7th to August 7th. It's a collaboration between the LA Public Library's Neighborhood Science Initiative and LA Sanitation and the Environment's Biodiversity Program. And so you can go to lapl.org/BioBlitz. They use iNaturalist, so you can put it on your phone, and anytime you walk by anything from a caterpillar, you just start logging it, and it's helping the city sort of build this regional biodiversity picture that Los Angeles is now part of a global sort of biodiversity mapping. So I really encourage you, if you don't have iNaturalist on your phone, it's super fun. Through the Natural History Museum, help support that. So lots of ways to get involved in biodiversity in just in your own backyard with your kids. Lots of fun.
Meredith, would you send me that?
Yep.
You just mentioned so that I could add that in. Well, I want to say that this has been amazing, and you have all been amazing, and I really appreciate, I and the city of Santa Monica and Santa Barbara really appreciate you participating in this. Brenda's putting in the link to the Survey Monkey, so remember you can get some free honey. 2 people get some honey from Eli's Bees. There'll be a drawing for everyone who fills out the survey. And about 6 months ago, the Santa Monica Daily Press did an article about a Santa Monica beekeeper, and Brenda's going to put the link in there so you can read a little bit about her and what she's doing. And in the film, David Attenborough asks, what inspiration can we take from this moment to find ways to better coexist with nature? So attendees and panelists, as you leave this event, in the hours, the days, and the weeks ahead, please continue to ask yourself that question. What inspiration can I take from this moment, meaning the pandemic and how things have gotten better, to find ways to better coexist with nature, then take action to do that. This has been so inspiring. You guys are doing great work. That film was wonderful and really gives me hope. And let's find ways to keep the good stuff going. And the bad stuff, one thing that was bad was all the to-go that we were all using and that getting to the trash. So let's find ways to keep the good stuff going and curb the bad stuff. Thank you again so much for joining us. We look forward to having everyone attend our future events and have a wonderful, sustainable, biodiverse, ecologically friendly summer. Bye all.
Thanks, Gina. Good job. Thanks, Meredith. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Brenda.
Bye-bye. Eat honey.
Love it.